Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Tuesday morning to you all. I hope everyone is doing well out there this morning and having an awesome start to your day and a fantastic week out there so far. Here to give you some updated information on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Tuesday. We'll speak on some storms, a little bit of snow, a lot of rain potential for certain areas of the southeast, even a pesky rain event for areas of the northeast that we're dealing with already this morning. We'll break all that down, get very detailed between now and the next 24 hours. And of course, as always, we'll extend it a little bit into our next day too, which will be Wednesday, and kind of break down what's to come. There's a lot of kind of medium to the potential for bigger things coming up in the weather world over the next few to several days. We have a multi-day severe weather event coming up out ahead of us that we'll speak on in this video. We'll get much more detailed on that when we know a little bit more information. Is this going to be a high-end kind of spring event that we typically see in the spring? We don't know. As of now, it does not look like it will be, but things can change, and they often do. So we'll talk about what we do know in this video, and then we'll also give you some updated information on a winter storm risk. We'll even talk about you folks up there in Atlantic Canada, as we have the potential for a pretty big winter storm as we get into the next couple days with a system coming up. And then we'll talk about a winter storm risk as we get to the tail end of this coming weekend into early next week for areas of the northeast, maybe even some winter weather for the Great Lakes region. So we'll speak on all this. We'll touch on all of it, and of course we'll get much more detailed as we work a little bit closer to all these events. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, and if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. And we'll not have a video this evening. We have soccer tonight, but I promise you guys, as we get into tomorrow, we'll start doubling up on these videos because we do have a lot coming up and get you guys the updated information as it comes to us. So let's get rocking and rolling out there this morning. Hope you guys are feeling well. I'm feeling pretty good this morning, so you might notice it in my voice, a little bit more peppy, feeling back to 100% from being sick a lot of days last week into this weekend. But we got a severe thunderstorm warning up in eastern Texas, a severe thunderstorm warning up in areas of Arkansas. And I do think we'll get more thunderstorms firing up later this afternoon, this evening in some of these areas. I think we'll have several hailstorms that have the potential to be there in like the state of Arkansas today. But as of now, we have rain out there already. We have a big area of rain just off the coastline of the Gulf Coast, but some of this rain is inland too and actually affecting people along the western panhandle of Florida, even some heavy rain still falling out there across southeast Louisiana, southern Alabama. It'll be a washout that moves into Georgia later this afternoon, this evening, into the Carolinas, into the overnight hours. And then we have this little system right here. It almost looks like a tropical system, right? It has a little bit of a spin, comma head look to it. This is bringing you folks a pretty soggy start to your Tuesday morning in like New York City, Long Island, some of the big cities along the I-95 corridor. This will continue to chug northward and bring some light to moderate rains across areas of the northeast today. And then we got a lot of heavy rain, not really any snow in lower Michigan. Rain back into the Midwest. A little area of snow we'll talk about. This will be a quick hitting winter weather event for areas of the north central U.S. And then we have a relatively isolated, kind of smaller piece of Pacific energy that's already moved into the western U.S. It's bringing some snow across areas of the Oregon Cascades, the higher elevations of Idaho, Nevada, even Northern California. This isn't a very long or broad storm, very compact, but we will have another system that will really affect Southern California. So my guy Ron down here in San Diego, looks like you got some rain coming over the next 48 hours. But that's what's going on right now, the Storm Prediction Center. We do have that marginal risk, and this is the latest information as of just before 7 a.m. Eastern Time. So we might get an upgrade. We might not. Yesterday we never did, but we had multiple reports of tornadoes up in northern Illinois. Potentially they were just gustnadoes, but there was a lot of storm chasers that got some pretty good footage on only a 2% day. We'll see if they confirm these as tornadoes, but either way, they look like tornadoes, and they have throwing a lot of dust around. A couple storm chasers were on this. A guy named Connor, which is some of you folks that are active in the weather community, he's a really good storm chaser up here in the Midwest area. He got on a pretty good storm up there, but nothing like that today up here in this region. But we do have a chance for some severe weather. We got ongoing severe weather right now across areas of the western deep south. But tornado threat's below 2%, but of course you can't rule it out. Wind threat, 5% risk of winds exceeding that 55 to 60 mile per hour criteria. And then the hail threat is only a 5% risk. But folks, I would not be surprised one bit. I would say it's a lower chance, but lower than 50-50. But we might get a slight risk somewhere up into here in Arkansas. I really do think, and I'll talk more on this here in a second, that we'll get some hailstorms that'll fire up. And I talked about this in yesterday morning's video too. Somewhere in Arkansas, really northwest Arkansas, and then they'll drift eastward, southeast, or eastward throughout the evening. So that's what's going on for the next 24 hours. As far as a flooding threat, just a marginal risk up, which means there's at least a 5% risk of flash flood guidance being met in this green area. So the flooding risk, not very significant today. But there is going to be areas like the Atlanta area that could get a couple inches of rain pretty quickly. I mean, I'm not talking about like 2 inches of rain in an hour, but it'll be a steady soaking rain in a lot of these areas today. Watches, warnings, and advisories. There's some dense fog still around across the south with a lot of moisture, surface moisture around the atmosphere. And as you can tell, a very compact winter storm affecting, as of right now, areas of the western U.S., but it's not like the system we saw this weekend where there was just a huge area of winter weather alerts across the western U.S. Just winter storm warnings up for southern Oregon, northern California, a couple winter storm warnings up for Idaho, winter weather advisories mainly up for the higher elevations of Idaho, several winter weather advisories up for southern Montana, and there is some winter storm warnings up for like the northwestern section of Wyoming. And once again, we got some high wind warnings up for southeast Wyoming. This has to be one of the windiest portions of the lower 48. You know, as I talk more about the western U.S., I kind of pick up on common occurrences, and it seems like that's a very common occurrence for it to always be some sort of winter weather alert in southeast Wyoming, and certainly no difference this morning. Rainfall across the southeast today. Of course, we're not expecting any winter weather, but a lot of rain. I think the HRRR model is verifying pretty well what's going on in the Gulf of Mexico right now. But as we make it to about midday, we'll start to get more of a widespread coverage of rain into western and southwestern sections of Georgia. It'll be a very rainy morning and afternoon, evening for North Florida, the panhandle of Florida, really into the Big Bend areas of the state of Florida. Some thunderstorms could redevelop later on this afternoon around midday in the southern half of Mississippi, more just widespread rain up in northern Alabama. And, you know, we could get some thunderstorms up in Indiana, but we'll talk more on that here in a second. And then we kind of keep this going. We take it all the way into late this afternoon, this evening, and that's when we see these thunderstorms firing up in Arkansas. And we'll talk, like I said this in yesterday morning's video, but let's keep Louisiana and Arkansas in the south central frame. So we won't speak on these storms you're seeing in Arkansas quite yet, but we'll speak on Tennessee. Some storms could make their way into western Tennessee later this afternoon, this evening. Some thunderstorms firing up on the Mississippi River, and just east, we got this area of heavy rain making its way through Alabama. And then by the time you make it into about the middle of the night tonight, I'm talking about midnight, 1, 2 a.m., the low really starts to get going, becomes stronger, and we could have a line of storms that really slash through the entire state of Florida after the sun sets tonight. As you can tell, you got this line of storms moving in. We might get a marginal risk issued down here for Florida for tonight, sometime in the next update or two. We'll have to watch, but you know, if you live in the peninsula of Florida, definitely expect some thunderstorms, some rumbles of thunder, flashes of lightning overnight tonight as a low is trying to develop. And typically on the south end of this low, you typically have more ingredients for severe weather. But check out these washout conditions moving into the wee hours of the morning in Atlanta, Columbia, Augusta. Rain starting to move into southwest North Carolina, even eastern Tennessee. And then you kind of have this additional low right in here with some thunderstorms ongoing in eastern North Carolina, the Outer Banks. And then we take it into Wednesday morning, just a washout that you're waking up to for your Wednesday morning. And then we'll kind of have this upper level low that pulls through, and this will kind of deliver some more backside rain across areas of North Georgia, upstate of South Carolina. More rain will move back into North Carolina after the initial push, and we could have some thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon. But this is getting more so into tomorrow afternoon, and this system will continue to chug off into the northeast as we're getting into tomorrow night. Rainfall between now and the next 48 hours someone could get over an inch in Florida with this line of storms that moves in. But the Panhandle of Florida is good for, some of this is accounting for what's already fallen, but the Panhandle of Florida could get another inch, inch and a half of rain. Atlanta, a washout, 1 to 2 inches of rain expected. Birmingham, about an inch. Huntsville, about an inch of rain. Columbia, about an inch, inch and a half to Augusta. And then could get a few inches of rain later tonight to tomorrow, more so for the Outer Banks, eastern North Carolina. So just a very rainy period for everybody on this map. Almost everybody in the Southeast is at least going to see at least a little bit of rain over the next 48 hours, that's for sure. The Northeast today, you'll have this little system that'll kind of move through. This will deliver some rain. No real snow unless you live way on up there. Maybe you get a wintry mix, but 99% of everybody, I would say 99.9% of everybody will see mainly rain. Could even get some rumbles of thunder like in New York City later on this morning to about midday, but I wouldn't count on it if you're a thunderstorm fan. But we get into this afternoon, maybe some heavier burst of rain, and there's kind of that more yellowish, orangish area, meaning some heavier burst of rain through southern New England. Look at this widespread, just light to at times moderate rain throughout the mountainous regions of the interior Northeast. And then at the same time, we do have another system kind of entering the region. Some thunderstorms are possible in Ohio this afternoon, this evening. They'll kind of make their way west to east. Some thunderstorms will try to rumble out of Indiana into Kentucky and Ohio. Could get some thunderstorms throughout the state of Kentucky today. And I think they will lose some steam with the loss of daytime heating and just the weakening of this system for the most part. And by the time we get into the overnight hours, we got this system's that's starting to move up into eastern Canada. And then we'll just get more so just showers. No real cold air to be found in Maine. And then we start to get this next system that will try to get rejuiced, and then we get more moisture that starts to move in from the south with this system. And here it comes. You deal with a soggy day today, even more of a soggy day tomorrow afternoon across the I-95 corridor. And here it comes. A little bit more cold air trying to crash down this system. And we'll speak more on this here in a bit. But this looks like a washout developing tomorrow evening with some cold air trying to catch up with this in the interior Northeast. But between now and just tomorrow morning, just this first system, a good ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch of rain for areas of the Mid-Atlantic, the I-95 corridor or the Mid-Atlantic, and then maybe a little bit less as we get into southern New England up to Maine, maybe a 1/4 inch to ½ an inch of rain. No real winter weather expected with this. The south central U.S., we got those thunderstorms in eastern Texas this morning. They could redevelop, could get some thunderstorms that develop in southeast Oklahoma, northeast areas of Texas. And then this is when these storms will get going again. This is around 3 p.m. South Central Time here, Central Time. Some storms around the Boot Heel, kind of around extreme western Kentucky, western Tennessee. But these storms right in here, this is just southeast of a very, but a more drier, chillier air mass, more stable air mass. And typically when you have storms that form along this boundary like this, you have some cooler, drier air aloft. This will aid in a hail threat in this region. And we got to watch out all these storms that kind of develop in areas of Arkansas today, right here in this region. I do think they'll have the capability of producing hail. We'll zoom into this here in a second. But these storms will drift off and kind of crash down into northern Mississippi later on after midnight tonight and sort of lose some steam by the time we get into daybreak tomorrow. But a closer look at these storms. Don't let this catch you by surprise. Seems like Arkansas has been the hail central as far as storms this year so far. It seems like every day I jump on social media and see a meteorologist out here, a weather enthusiast, posting about a hailstorm in Arkansas. And, you had it happen yesterday, and it's like, I would say it's 100% chance of happening again today. Look at these storms firing up, I would say, just west and northwest and north of Little Rock. All these storms right here, the Texarkana region. Mary, I know you live in northeast Texas. You could get some hailstorms today. I'm not talking about hail the size of baseball's guys, but, it could be some dime to quarter size hail. I mean, it's very possible. Could be a lot of it too. These will have the potential to produce some hail. Like I said, if we get an upgrade to a slight risk, it's going to be because of hail in this region. But you really got to get some large hail. And I'm not sure they're expecting very large hail in this setup. But, this is around 5 to 6 p.m. Look at these storms. And they could drift into the Little Rock area. But I do think they'll be pretty strong for a few hours. And then they'll kind of consolidate and maybe drift into and across the Mississippi Delta region as we get well into the overnight hours. But don't be surprised in this area right in here in Arkansas, you get some hailstorms today, even in southeast Oklahoma, northeast sections of Texas. The north central U.S. today, kind of two things going on. One, some moderate to heavy snow in a very kind of small, compact area. Will kind of drift out of South Dakota, more so into North Dakota. Could lose some steam. This is taking us to about midday right here. A little bit of snow falling out here in North Dakota and northwest Minnesota. At the same time, we do have these storms this morning in the Midwest, the Ohio Valley. They will continue to drift throughout Indiana. Could get some rumbles of thunder in the Indianapolis area sometime later this morning, and these storms will continue to drift off. I don't expect these to be, for the most part, these should remain below severe limits. This is kind of what it looks like in this area right now. There's no severe thunderstorms right now. I don't even think really any of these are really strong, but definitely be aware of these for sure. But that, as we continue to get into the overnight hours, things quiet down for the Great Lakes region. And then we have another system to enter your screen right in here. Let's go on and just take a look at that, a little bit closer look. And there comes that first round of snow. And then we start to get into the overnight hours. A weak low kind of develops into here, enough cold air kind of trapped up here in North Dakota. We get this round of snow that falls in the northern counties of North Dakota, not so much South Dakota. So waking up tomorrow morning to a snowy start to our Wednesday morning, and this becomes a little bit more widespread. Could become heavy, guys. I mean, 1 inch per hour rates are possible. We got a quick hitting snow event up in these areas, a couple days ago. And here comes the snow in the far northwest counties of Minnesota. And, but you're going to struggle with any kind of cold air. Look, it's raining in these areas. We're getting into tomorrow evening. And we could get this band of snow that kind of gets going here in eastern South Dakota, rumbling right through the heart of Minnesota. And this is as far out as the HRRR model goes. This is as far out as we will go. But between now and the next 48 hours, guys, between what's going to fall kind of today and then what will develop kind of tomorrow, after midnight tonight into tomorrow, someone could squeeze in a half a foot of snow. And it looks like the National Weather Service is favoring that area to be maybe the extreme northeast county of North Dakota and the extreme northwest county of Minnesota. So, a good swath of 2 to 6 inches of snow somewhere here in this region right up here in Minnesota, North Dakota. But we could get a couple inches of snow with what could fall, throughout the next 24 hours in this area right in here too. So out west, really the big topic over the next day and night is this snow flying around across Northern California, Oregon, Idaho. This will continue throughout the morning, the afternoon hours. Will kind of drift southward, and snow will begin to pick up in like the northwestern sections of Wyoming. Some light to moderate snow in the southern counties of Montana will fall, and eventually that portion of this system with this trough kind of digging down will eventually move and create that quick heating winter weather event that we just talked about for North Dakota, but we won't talk about that again. But some of this snow will start to drift down to the central Rockies, and then we start to get into tomorrow morning, and this is when our upper trough that's going to bring a severe weather threat across the entire southern tier of the country starts to move inland, and this is when we start to see some rain. And I would say the entire California coastline, but more so the central and southern California coastline. Not a flooding event by any means, guys, but this will bring some rains into the central and southern coastlines, San Francisco, down to LA, down to San Diego, Santa Barbara, everybody in between. We'll see some rain. This will deliver a little bit of snow to the Sierra Nevada, and this is as far out as we'll go. Even if you kind of zoom into this region, we'll kind of show you guys some love and get a little bit closer to the southwest here. If you look even closer, it looks like we even have some thunderstorms down here just outside of LA and San Diego. So we'll watch out for that. But, we've seen some crazy storms in the valley regions of California over the last couple of days with, 2 tornadoes, pretty wild stuff. But the snow between now and the next 48 hours, another several inches to maybe as much as 2 feet of snow, maybe 3 feet of snow, depending on your elevation and the Oregon Cascades and these higher peaks and mountain ranges here in northern California. We'll get several inches of snow to maybe over a foot and a half. And even outside these higher terrain regions of the Cascades. Several inches of snow expected in these regions right here. What do y'all call this? I think, I hate saying regions. I think they call certain sections right in here what the Columbia River Basin right in here. And I know it's kind of more, more sporadic elevated regions. I know up here in Washington, it's more just like a plateau. But, you're obviously more elevated here in Oregon to get more snow that we're seeing here. But anyways, I don't want to stay on that too long, but we look at Idaho and what this looks like in areas surrounding Idaho. It's between now and I would say the next 50 to 54 hours. So 2.5 days. Well, a little over 2 days. Several inches to over a foot of snow expected. Somewhere could get 1.5 feet, 2 feet of snow in these higher elevated regions of Wyoming. Several inches of snow. There's a sharp cutoff though from southern Wyoming to central Wyoming that you see right in here. So this is really a more southerly routed storm. So it's really just going to impact a pretty smaller area, but it's going to move right into Idaho. Already is this morning, going to deliver those several inches of snow. But some of these valley regions also could get some snow too. So, but rainfall between now and Thursday evening, there's that little bit of rain showing up. Someone could squeeze in 1/4 to 1/2 inch of rain. From the central all the way to the southern California coastline and a little bit inland, of course, those higher mountain ranges in Southern California will certainly try to squeeze out a little bit more rain, so go on and expect that. But temperatures, not quite as widespread warmth today, but I mean, even with this little weak wannabe cold front has moved through the Midwest, I mean, even these 40s and 50s for the Midwest, this is still a little bit above average, even for early March standards. But look at these 60s and 70s climbing all the way up into southern Ontario, 70s widespread all the way up into eastern PA. And really the only thing keeping the Northeast from staying warm is this low pressure moving in and the rain kind of keeping the temperatures down. And temperatures widespread in the 60s and 70s in the Southeast, 80s into Florida. Texas, 80. Someone will probably hit 90 degrees in South Texas. But, there is a boundary of cooler air right in here. And then there's really cold air up here in like North Dakota. Out west, it's definitely warming back up. Not as cold as it's been the last few days. Warming back up in the Southwest for sure. You're starting to see widespread 60s and 70s in those lower elevated regions. But it's still pretty cold up here in the Northern Rockies. But there's going to be a pretty sharp temperature gradient here in Montana, where you'll be in the 40s in the southeastern portion of Montana, but just stuck in the teens, maybe single digits in the northeastern portion of the state. So the rest of this system, I do want to mention this, will start it off in the middle of the night tomorrow night. You're going to be dealing with a washout across the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, and then we take it into our Thursday morning. See how the cold air is trying to catch up with this in areas of Maine. It definitely could. There's not a lot of people talking about this much anymore because it's kind of trending away from more of a significant event. But we kind of keep this going. Cold air will try to catch up with this like in the northern half of Maine. But, as we are getting into our Thursday afternoon, and maybe another secondary low will try to develop. Just an awful wet week for the Northeast. Another low will try to form, and then this heads on out. And then by the time we finally get into our Thursday afternoon, you'll get a break. But that's all you get is a brief break, as another system will probably ride up at the end of the weekend. But for the most part, this does just look like, I do think that we'll get a chance of a little bit of snow up here. We take a look at the latest European model. It does want to bring that swath of snow in northern Maine. Maybe a few inches of snow is possible from this, but we'll watch. But my folks up here in like New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, all these areas up here certainly have the opportunity for more of a substantial winter storm. Newfoundland especially. As the system moves in, we get into our Thursday. It's the same kind of situation with the Northeast, right? You got cold air trying to crash down on all this precipitation moving in. It's came down quick enough already for I need to stop saying New Brunswick, for Newfoundland, where, it might just be all winter weather. But, Nova Scotia, you're seeing a rainstorm initially. But it's snowing in the northern half of New Brunswick. And then this starts to move down. the Prince Edward Island region starts to get, man, I'm sitting here brain farting what this area is right here. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to pull this up on the fly. It is irritating the heck out of me as I speak. I had this entire area kind of memorized. Cape Breton Island. Cape Breton Island. All right, now it's stuck like glue. Cape Breton Island, it's mostly rain initially. As we're getting into the first half of our day, Thursday. But if you see this pesky pink, it's a real deal. We could get some freezing rain with this setup. It's kind of like you'll go from rain to maybe freezing rain to eventually snow. And we stop it here. This is like Thursday evening, like after the sunset. Look at this rain. Still hanging on to rain across the southern coastlines of Nova Scotia, even Cape Breton Island. And look at this freezing rain for the southern extension regions kind of Newfoundland. But then you're switching to that freezing rain, and eventually snow, and you stop it here. Guys, this is an ugly look. This is Friday morning. Look at this freezing rain falling across Nova Scotia. It looks like Cape Breton Island. It looks like Prince Edward Island starting to wrap up for you guys. But there's this corridor of freezing rain that's showing up from the Euro that looks quite nasty. And you kind of keep this going, and this new low kind of develops and gets rejuiced up. Looks like he's trying to switch to all snow sometime Friday evening in Cape Breton Island. And then you get to Newfoundland, and you already have been dealing with this winter storm, and then kind of one last gasp of this comes through and really hits the southeastern portions of Newfoundland pretty hard. So, I would watch out. What is that? I think that's the St. John's region. You guys probably have a winter storm on the way. Sorry, I had to look at my phone. I had all this stuff memorized at one point. That's why repetition. You got to keep talking about it to memorize it, right? So, how much snow is expected in this area? Well, I don't know what the locals are calling for, but we'll look at the European ensemble. And as far as snow, I don't think a whole lot's going to be expected here in the southwestern sections of Nova Scotia. But the further kind of north, and I would say northeast you work, all the way to Cape Breton Island eventually, the more snow is possible. I know y'all measure it in centimeters. I know. So about 15 centimeters is about a half a foot of snow, 6-7 inches of snow. New Brunswick, it just depends on where you are. You could get anywhere from 8 to 9 centimeters of snow to maybe as much as 20 centimeters of snow. But you get into Newfoundland, guys, and this is when maybe over a foot, maybe more of snow could fall, especially the further you work into the southeastern sections of Newfoundland. But widespread, 10 to as much as 40 centimeters of snow as possible. It just depends on where you are. But one thing I am concerned about, and we'll just kind of have to go back and look at the European, and there's the operational run, by the way, through Friday evening. And, the latest operational run brings more snow, which I just showed you the ensemble run, but the operational run of the 06Z Euro, man, really he hits Cape Breton Island pretty hard, folks, with over 50 centimeters of snow in certain areas. So this is still tweaking, right? But it really cuts this off for the northern half of New Brunswick. And I got to stop saying that. Newfoundland, the northern half of Newfoundland. Please accept my apology for my folks in Canada. We'll get it right. Now, I will show you this, and this is overdone. Probably a little overdone. The operational models typically overdo ice totals. So I would say deduct this 30 to 40%. So I don't know if we're going to get 3/4 to an inch of ice in Nova Scotia. But I do think we have a chance for a serious ice event for Nova Scotia and portions of Newfoundland. And of course, Prince Edward Island, Cape Breton Island, and areas of New Brunswick. Please don't discount this. And somewhere in between all this, there's probably going to be sleet too. But folks, I don't think this is going to be an all snow event. You're going to have rain, a nasty mixture of freezing rain. I think that's on the table with this. So please be aware of that. All right, let's move forward. So tomorrow there is kind of a bimodal severe weather risk. There's a marginal risk into here and a marginal risk for Florida. We're not going to talk much on that. We'll talk more on it as we get into the next video. But there is 2 areas to watch for severe weather tomorrow. Just want to kind of give you guys a heads up. This is for Wednesday. Now, as we move forward, we get into Thursday. We're going to show you the alerts first, and we'll talk about why we have these alerts. There's a slight risk of severe weather in the heart of Texas tomorrow, literally right in the middle of Texas. And then there is a slight risk for a very small section of southern and southwestern Oklahoma. Marginal risk extends all the way up to Wichita, Kansas, all the way down to the Mexico U.S. line down here in southwestern sections and southern sections of Texas. So we do have that. Okay. All right, cool. Well, thanks for letting me know that. That's cool. It always asks me if I should, do the ad block, but that's cool too. That was an awesome addition to the video. But you kind of keep this going anyways, disregard. It does that like once a week to me. But the severe weather event will be there for Thursday. So we need to pay attention to this for sure. Could this uptrend? It could, but I think right now, Thursday looks a good bet to at least be a slight risk. And I think it'll stay like that. We'll see what happens. So right now, all we know is there's a 15% risk of severe weather. And then we move into day 4. I think this has an opportunity to be more of a high-end severe weather event. I'm not talking about like a moderate to high risk, but I do think if anything has an opportunity to go to an enhanced risk, it's Friday across the deep south. And I think the reason this isn't extended further north, and it talks about this in the discussion from the Storm Prediction Center, is because we're lacking an extension northward of surface moisture. I think it'll be confined to the south. I don't think there's a deep connection of moisture with this system, but there will be where it is, which is in these kind of deep south states and like the southern sections of these Gulf states, okay? So there's a 15% risk of severe weather in this area in yellow right into here in eastern Texas, all the way into the western panhandle and southern sections of Alabama and Florida. So that means there's basically a slight risk at day 4, level 2 out of 5 risk at day 4. And, I do want to show you this. Day 5 says predictability too low, but I'm pretty sure we will have severe weather for Saturday too. And the Storm Prediction Center says basically confidence is too low to issue a 15% risk corridor for areas in the southeast. But they say that, it would potentially be for Alabama, maybe Georgia, the panhandle of Florida. So we do need to watch Saturday too, but we don't have a risk area up. And this is really because of this upper level trough. You see this blue blob right here. Focus on this one. This is lower pressure. And then you see the orange and reds right in here. That's higher pressure. So this system moves in, and then we get into Thursday afternoon, and this is digging down. Call it an upper low, upper trough, whatever you want to call it, same thing. And this is bringing a lot of moisture from the south, right on the kind of the eastern edge of this, as this is bringing southwesterly winds on basically the southeast flank of this upper low. And this kind of continues, and then we get into Friday. It kind of gets like a cut-off upper low, so when it's kind of cut off, there's nothing really driving or pushing this, so it's going to be very slow moving. That's why you don't see a huge shift directional-wise from Texas to the deep south. Typically, these severe weather events move a lot more states than what I just showed you on the risk area, but this is really moving slow. But, eventually we start to get into our Saturday. This starts to connect to some energy to the north, and this begins to speed up, potentially becoming a bigger system. But, it could potentially lose the severe ingredients to it. So we get into Saturday, and then this system continues to pull on through. And then this has the potential to do some weird things into the northeast the later half of this weekend into early next week, which we'll talk about here in a second. As far as what this looks like at the surface, as far as rain and snow, here comes the system moving into the southwest, bringing that rain we just talked about for California. Then it starts to become a little bit more significant, more larger. We look at Thursday 21Z, it's Thursday afternoon. There's that low right here. And you see just the greens in Texas and Oklahoma, Missouri, Kansas, Arkansas. That could be in the form of some severe weather. And then there could be a cold side that's bringing some snow for like eastern Colorado, the high plains, maybe up into Iowa, the Midwest. We'll have to watch this scenario. Thursday afternoon, you see how low this low pressure is? This is probably bringing a very small but deep, compact, moist sector into this area right here. It's going to probably be a lot of lift in the atmosphere, so there'll probably be a lot of convection for Friday, which could mess up the severe weather event, which would be a good thing. But then, we start to get into Saturday. There could be some ongoing severe weather Saturday morning. And then we start to get into Saturday afternoon. And then that's when we have to watch for some severe weather for areas of the southeast. And then we kind of keep this going, right? And then this is when cold air tries to connect with this. Upper trough kind of digs down. This low tries to deepen over land. Mainly rain for everybody in the Northeast except these higher elevations. And, we'll kind of get a closer look at just the eastern U.S. And I knew it was going to do that. I love when it does it. That's sarcasm. But you kind of keep this going, right? And do you have some sort of transfer of lows? We get in the Sunday afternoon. Look at this heavy snow flying around in the ski country, the higher elevated regions of the interior Northeast. Backside cold air brings down with some northern stream energy. This could potentially kickstart some lake effect snow in March, but, not unheard of, but it can happen. But this will bring some interior Northeast snow, and we just got to see what this system does. It's a very interesting looking system that could develop into more of an intense scenario. But as far as that severe weather event, as far as the ingredients and what this system does, look at it pulling this low-level moisture in, getting into Thursday afternoon, you got dew points, little pools of dew points into the low 60s. This is thermodynamics. This is an ingredient for severe weather. Higher dew points, higher surface temperatures, CAPE levels, all those good things. Typically, the higher your dew points, more moisture in the atmosphere, typically the higher your CAPE levels. That's not the only thing that drives that storm fuel, but it's one of the ingredients. But check this out. As we get into Friday afternoon, a more compact, moist sector, not huge. I mean, you got dew points into the 50s all the way into the Midwest, but you're probably lacking other things. But you got a pool of moist air in the upper 60s and low 70s as far as dew points down here in the western deep south. Okay. But then you continue to move into your Saturday afternoon, and you got dew points that, the dew points that the moisture, surface moisture, does not look like it's extending as far north as it was in like yesterday's video when we were talking about this, but a very moist pool of air down here in South Florida, Southern Alabama, the entire state of Florida, even into the low country of South Carolina. So, does the convection outrun the ingredients? We're just not quite sure. But then the cold front sweeps through and stabilizes the atmosphere. And then, of course, you look at the kinematics, that mid-level jet, plenty of lift in the atmosphere. This is what we call the mid-level jet. There's that, 50 to 60, 65 knot mid-level jet. This is aiding in a favorable wind environment in the upper levels of the atmosphere. This is about 18,000 feet up in the air. And basically think of this area in purple as just kind of a lifting factor in the atmosphere. It's also providing some speed shear, and there could be some directional shear also with this, with a low-level jet bringing winds in a different direction. But you kind of keep this going, right? And this is bringing plenty of kinematics, aided with these thermodynamics down here. You definitely have, a solid mid-level flow out the southwest in these regions, way above in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And then we start to move into our Saturday. Of course, the kinematics certainly start to increase as we start to get a much larger system. But is the convection outrunning the overlapping of this favorable kinematics and thermodynamics? We're just not quite sure with this yet. So we'll continue to watch this. But there goes that first storm system signal as we get into the end of this work week. But there is a more significant system. And yes, this could bring some snow for the Great Lakes region this weekend. But there's a pretty large signal for snow in the Northeast, guys. And I'm not talking about, for my folks in the I-95 corridor, New York City, Boston, Washington, D.C. But, for the Northeast, the interior Northeast, this could be one of those kind of big hitters for the interior Northeast. Pretty solid signal in the medium to long range. So that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all, and y'all have a wonderful Tuesday.